Hello, and welcome to the Educational Coach and the Four Hats. This self-paced module will give you the opportunity to explore the four hats and think about your role as a coach. To operate this module, please press the play button. You are encouraged to pause the video when there are questions posed and take some time to reflect on your answers. This module has been adapted to your learning style. Today, we will explore the four distinct roles and their intention, and understand the difference between informative and mediative roles. As you recall, educational coaching is defined as a transparent practice of providing intentional support to school personnel to mediate thinking, clarify goals, and build capacity for the purpose of increasing student achievement. And the focus of our work is always the instructional core, the interaction of the teacher and the student in the presence of content. What role do you play as an educational coach? Facilitator, presenter, coach, or consultant? To facilitate means to make easier. Take a moment to read the explanation. To present is to teach. Take a moment to read the explanation. To consult is to advocate. Take a moment to read the explanation. To coach is to help another person take action toward his or her goal. Take a moment to read the explanation.
For each of the four roles, there are three components to assist you in understanding the role. They are the intention, driver, and tools. Intention, an aim that guides a course of action you plan to follow. Driver, what drives the role? What determines the stance you will take? Tools, the skills and processes used to align with the intention. Take a moment and look at the diagram of the first role. The intent of the presenter is to transfer information to extend and enrich the knowledge and skills so that people can apply that in their work. What drives this role is a learner's instructional outcome. Always keeping in mind, what does the learner want to get out of the presentation? What do the learners need to know and be able to do with the information presented? Some of the tools that a presenter can use are lecture, direct instruction, case studies, data, PowerPoint, research information, and interactive teaching strategies. The presenter does most of the talking in this role and needs to be well prepared and organized. Let's observe a presenter in action.
Well, first of all, it really is a great honor to be here. It's to talk to your colleagues. I mean, I've been where you've been. And actually, you guys, when you were figuring which room to go to, it reminded me of a story. When I was a first grade teacher, I found myself oftentimes talking to my colleagues on the minority part of the votes. you know? So we would make decisions and I would be outvoted. So I made this hand, and on the hand were 5 hands. So I would take it to all the meetings, and when we would vote, I would have 5 votes. It's a true story. It's funny, too. So, so you might try that at your school. It really is quite productive. No, I want to thank the folks who put this together, Dave and Barbara and Grant in particular. He's the handler, and in the best sense of the word, and everything, and Megan too from the office it's just sweet to come. This is my 2nd visit, so I'm happy to be here. And I figure if I keep talking like this, we could get to lunch and not actually have to work. That's a joke too, guys. Right? I will inform you when the joke is coming now, so you'll be ready for it. So my assignment today is really twofold. I want to talk about achievement gaps, but I want to be clear, this afternoon's discussion about what we call pastoral care for children, cultures of community for kids, is completely isomorphic with where we'll be this morning. It's just a piece of what the work has to go on. So I have the clicker, I believe. Is that true? Clicker? On the podium? Aha. Yeah. All right. So I want to set the stage with this. I want to do a little bit of background, and then I want to jump into some of the deeper lessons. So the major point here is not a set of strategies that you can just dump on your school and get better. There's a deeper message when you think about closing achievement gaps, and I don't mean to say it's philosophical or theoretical, but it's the critical DNA if your gap closing activities are going to be able to work. All right, so we want to stay back there, and then we'll close up with some specific things to do and some cautions and caveats as you go forward. So this is the gaps. I'll go through this pretty quickly. What you're going to see here is stuff you've seen from your own school and your state data. I just want to make a couple points with it. So what I'm going to show is a set of national data on gaps, and you can see the red line at the top is always going to be the
Take a moment to look at the diagram of the 2nd row. The intent of the consultant is to advocate for a process and content. A consultant may share their expertise with an individual or group and advocate for certain instructional strategies. A consultant is considered an expert and may be called on for suggestions or recommendations. What drives this role is the client's desired outcome. A client could be a coachee, a grade level group, a school improvement team, or even a meeting of other coaches. Many times, the client is unsure about their outcomes. Therefore, the consultant comes in with their expertise to advocate. The tools used by the consultant are group processes, skills, and delivering expertise. Expertise may be delivered through a demonstration lesson, advocating for the coachee to use specific strategies or content. When you wear this hat, you are not mediating, you are telling. Let's observe a consultant in action.
Hi, good morning. I'm Dr. Brian Boggs. I'm here to talk to you about organizational change for your school and district as your consultant. So I have for you a handout that goes over our services that we offer. In particular, there are several strategies that we are offering to your district. So let's begin by looking at the first one, which is organizing for learning within your district. And we want to then talk about the budget, personnel, and staffing as 2 additional strategies that we may be able to use for you. Now, each one of these strategies will require you to make some changes within your organization. It'll require you to make adjustments to how you currently do business, and we'll need to have all the staff members on board to engage in this process.
That's very interesting. And I am really excited about those three strategies that you lifted, but I'm also concerned about my staff's acceptance and their availability for learning something new. So, could you talk about strategy one, specifically organization for learning? What PD, what professional development might my staff need to know? How will I really allow them time outside of their classroom experience to begin to learn about this organization for learning?
Well, you know, our process really works best when we go through the entire handout and presentation as it is, and we'll go through each strategy in detail, and then we'll come back to the questions afterwards.
Okay.
So when we're talking about the organization for learning, we'll talk about the staff. We're going to talk about what it means to focus on student needs and student outcomes. And then we'll go on to adjusting how the money follows the student to allocate those resources as strategy 2. And then we're going to look at how you staff to support those strategies throughout the system. And then we'll get to our presentations to get the staff on board.
Sounds great. Looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Take a moment to look at the diagram of the next role. The intent of the facilitator is to complete the task serving the group's needs. The group is the center of attention. What drives this role is helping the group to reach consensus, agreement, and make decisions around the group's goal. The tools for this role are micro skills and process tools such as active listening, asking questions, keeping the group on task, and setting norms. The facilitator provides the structure for the conversations, engages all participants, and takes a non-judgmental stance. Let's observe a facilitator in action.
Good morning, ladies.
Good morning, Diane.
And thank you for coming. Thank you for considering to be a part of the planning team for Coaching 101. This is a new project. I'm really excited about it, and I hear you all come with outstanding skills. So I'm glad to have you as a part of the team. And Pat, thank you. You're a new member on our team, and we're glad to have you on board. The intent of our meeting is, as I indicated earlier, is to do planning. But before we start the actual planning, I want to just hear your thinking about this project. So before we do that, we're going to establish some norms, some working agreements that's going to guide our working together today.
So Diane, why don't I chart so that we can make our planning public?
Thank you, Pat. So I'd like to add the first norm is that we listen deeply to each other.
I think that since we're kind of delving into some uncharted territory here, I'd like to add the norm of being open to ideas. There's going to be a lot of ideas floating around. We need to be open.
And you know, not only being open, I think there's another dimension to it, and that is we should be willing to challenge ideas.
Yes.
Because we've got to be able to stretch.
That's right.
Because this is uncharted territory.
And Jenny, as we challenge those ideas, we're going to have to be very transparent with our thinking, that we put all of our ideas on the table for everyone's examination. Transparency is going to be very important in this entire process.
And I think it's going to be important for us to trust the process. That when we start something new, we may not know exactly where we're going, but we'll get there if we trust the process. Okay. Thank you. So let's review our norms. To listen deeply, to be open to new ideas, challenge ideas, be transparent, and trust the process. Are these norms acceptable to the team?
Yes.
Good. Okay, let's get started. To begin our work, I'd like to read just a brief overview of Coaching 101. I provided documents for you earlier in the week, and so you can follow along. I'd like to read the first statement, and then we'll dialogue, and then I'll read the second one, okay? Coaching 101 is a collaborative effort funded by a grant from the Michigan Department of Education to Michigan State University to increase programmatic coherence among the various coaching roles so all coaches can work together more effectively and productively on behalf of the schools they support.
Take a moment to look at the diagram of the last role. The intent of the coach is to mediate thinking, which is to skillfully influence thinking and feeling. The coach places themselves between the coachee and their thinking. The driver of this role is the coachee's thinking that provides a roadmap. The tools for this role are micro skills, active listening skills, the pause, paraphrase, probe pattern, and types of questions. Let's observe a coach in action.
Good morning, Pat.
Good morning, Diane.
It's great to see you again.
And as always, I enjoy our time to talk together.
Well, last week we planned this day to just explore some of your instructional practices. I know you've been wondering about some of the strategies that you use and how effective they have been for your youngsters.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You know, it all started with, my goodness, one of the school editors wanted to write a little piece on me as being a great teacher. And when they asked me to share some things, I was going, great, you know, I don't do anything other than what anyone else would do. In fact, I got great kids. I mean, they come to class regularly, they get in their seats, they get their materials. I mean, I really felt kind of embarrassed to have someone label me as being great. So I kind of wanted to talk to you. Maybe you can talk me through this. I just don't really get it. What am I doing so great that any other teacher is doing?
So you're wondering why the news in your school has selected you to be the outstanding teacher when basically you believe your kids come to you already ready to learn.
Absolutely. They come to school, I come to work. That's what it's about, right?
Well, you believe that the kids are already ready when they come to you.
Yes.
So Pat, as you think about your students when they come to you ready to learn, what strategies do you put in place to get them actively engaged?
Well, Diane, one of the first things as I think about it is, you know, with these kids, I don't care how old they are, they really need a set of good classroom procedures. When they walk in the door, the expectation is that they are going to leave with something new. And I have a set of procedures that they follow when they come into my room. So I guess I could think of that as even a strategy, because they know exactly what to do.
So when your students enter, you have a plan that they follow that you call procedures, and they follow it and they do well.
You're right. Yeah, I do.
And so what you're lifting for me, Pat, is you have a strategy that your students use that you've put in place, which is allow for your classroom to be orderly. So as you think about some other strategies that you've used in your classroom that has resulted in your students doing well, what comes to mind?
You know, I guess.
Take a moment to read and reflect on the questions. What's becoming clearer to you about the 4 hats? What is becoming clearer to you about the relationship between the driver and the coach's action? And what are you noticing about the available tools for each role? As you recall, the definition of the driver is what drives the role, what determines the stance you will take. Now you can see what is driving each role is different and is determined by the intention. For example, take a look at classroom management and how the drivers impact each role. Two of the roles are informative and two are mediative. These big ideas can be collapsed into two containers. Take a look at the diagram. The first provider is an informative provider. Take a moment to read the bullets for unpacking this concept. The second provider is the mediative provider. Now, read the bullets for unpacking this concept. Please take a moment to read and reflect on the following questions. Reflecting is a powerful tool for constructing meaning. The coach and consultant are two of the roles that many of you will encounter. Compare the intentions, drivers, and tools on the diagram. Setting the intention. Intention is a very powerful force in nature. This is a quote by Dr. Amit Goswami, quantum physicist. Merriam-Webster defines an intention as a thing that you plan to do or achieve an aim or purpose. As you recall, setting an intention can be described as an aim or a purpose that guides action. For greater elaboration, read the following statement. When you set an intention, you are more likely to make choices that support it, as displayed in what we do or what we think. You might forget all about your intention today, but some little part of your mind remembers it. Some examples are, I want to be fully present. I want to take risk. I want to connect with others. Or, I want to ask hard questions because I usually shy away from doing that. As you read the text, how might intention provide clarity? A well-stated intent will provide clarity for oneself and others. Setting an intention will set you on a course of action that will guide you to the choices you make. Truly being intentional requires understanding that our attitudes, feelings, thoughts, and actions impact every single one of our experiences. What does it mean to be intentional? Is it enough to mean well? Does it require detailed planning and specific definition of a desired outcome? Can we only be intentional about our situation right now? Take a moment to read and reflect on some additional questions as you consider the 4 distinct roles and their intention.
The Pyramid of Influence was designed by Costa and Garmston as a mental model to explain the relationship between intention, attention, and action. So as you look at the diagram, you'll notice that intention, the aim or goal, is in the future, attention in the present, and action, behavior, is in alignment with your intention. Change is brought about by conscious attention and intention. No matter what role or hat you wear, your actions will be directed and in alignment with your intention. For example, you may have set the conscious intention to paraphrase. Therefore, your intention will influence what you pay attention to. I intend to paraphrase. I look for opportunities to listen actively and paraphrase. Let's look at the distinct and unique intentions of each role. As a reminder, the consultant is an informative provider. As a reminder, the coach is a mediative provider. The educational coach can wear any of the 4 hats. Your intention helps you select which hat you will wear. Clarity of intention is essential in knowing which stance you take. What's becoming clearer to you about the 4 hats? What's becoming clearer to you about the relationship between intention and the 4 hats? Let's take a look at a coaching conversation.
Hi, Brian. How are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
Glad that we could have an opportunity to have a conversation. How might I support you in your thinking?
First of all, thank you for agreeing to meet with me. Had an incident last week sometime with some parents during some comments that were made, shared between myself and the parents, and they ended up calling me a racist, and I was, shocked and taken aback, and realized that I had become angry in the situation, and felt that I needed some help in responding to that.
So you were both stunned and angered by the fact that some parents that you were working with called you a racist.
Absolutely. I just couldn't believe that would be an accusation leveled at me. You know, I can't, but for the life of me, I understand why somebody would call me, you know, a black man, a racist, and just needing some assistance in kind of thinking through that process and how I can become a better principal.
So it's really incongruent for you that someone would look at you, a black man, an African American, and call you a racist. What do you think might be some of the things that they're thinking, and what is it that you think fuels that accusation?
I'm not quite sure, to be honest with you. I'm thinking that for whatever reason, we just weren't seeing eye to eye on the situation, and my comments just felt negative or derogatory to them and offensive to them, and by no means was that my intent, but you know, from their point of view, that's what they got out of the situation.
And so it sounds like you want to get past the feelings that you've had of anger and being stunned and trying to figure out a way to have, to respond appropriately and effectively with them. So what do you envision what would happen if you were responding appropriately and effectively with them? What would it look like for you?
I guess in a future conversation with them, I guess, I would like to share some personal stories of my own, considering my own family and some incidents that we've encountered with my daughter in the school district that she attends. I'd like to share, you know, that incident with them and the way that incident made me feel personally, and then kind of listen to them and realize, you know, their point of view and how my reactions and comments affected them.
And so one of your goals in this conversation, you want to be able to come away with a plan that helps them to get to know you accurately.
Absolutely.
And so as you think about that idea, I'd like you for a moment to climb into their minds. And if you were in their minds, what do you think they heard that might make them make that accusation, that might cause them to make that accusation?
There must have been some condescending comments, where potentially I was less than supportive of some of the Hispanic or white students at our school. That's generally not my belief, but potentially that's where the genesis of their frustration came from.
What might be some of those comments? Could you give me some concrete examples?
Reflecting on that conversation, I can't really recall a comment specifically, but I do recall us discussing abilities and behaviors of different students at our building, and if I recall, we also started talking about groups of students, and I can imagine that some of my comments might have come off as grouping and lumping certain students into poor behavior or poor abilities, and that might have been where that came from.
So your hunch is that when the parents, white and Hispanic parents, heard you, your sharing about their grouping of their abilities, they felt that probably you were grouping their kids in that and didn't feel that was a fair assessment of their students. And so knowing that you're an effective communicator as a principal, when you've had someone misunderstand your communication pattern, what have been some strategies that you've used?
I would tend to try to step back, allow for some space, and then offer an opportunity for the other person to share what they heard, and then allow myself an opportunity to respond to that calmly, and often I find that there's some resolution can come from just hearing each other all the way out and not, not getting frustrated. And I understand that I did get angry in that previous meeting, and that the anger is what helped fuel the parents' frustration.
So a successful strategy for you is first step back.
Yes.
Hear what their point of view was. Enter into their side of, or their point of view or their perspective. And then in that sharing, you come to some resolutions.
Right.
Okay? So as you're thinking about that, what would be some steps that you think that you can take to move yourself to that point?
To move myself towards
having the
resolution,
having that meeting with them,
having the meeting. I would definitely invite all of those parents back in for not only one-on-one session, but also a group session, because I found that people are often open in different environments. So I would offer the opportunity for folks to meet with me one-on-one, and then also offer opportunity for folks to meet in a group setting, and that way some differences and frustrations can get aired in different environments.
So you also mentioned that you knew you got angry at that meeting, and you think that fueled it. What might be some things that you need to do to prepare yourself to respond effectively as you've had in the past? The very fact that you could name some of the steps that you use, what might be some things that you need to do inwardly to prepare yourself for that kind of meeting?
It would be definitely more important for me to be less, take things less personal, and realize that all of our conversations and all of our actions in this school are for the betterment of students, and to put students first and foremost in all of my actions and in my statements as well. And so I need to keep in mind that my words as the leader of this school affect people positively and obviously now negatively.
So high consciousness about the words and the language that you use will support that kind of effective communication, especially in what has been a conflicting type of situation. And so are there some strategies that you can bring to mind or think about, this might be a good takeaway, that you can use to help yourself do that?
Yeah, I would, again, need to remain calm again, first and foremost. And like I mentioned before, not take things personal, okay? And then when I think about the conversation that we were having, talking about students' abilities and student behavior, that I need to be more mindful of the language that I use, as to not, first of all, group students inappropriately, and then also be mindful of not necessarily segregating students based on race.
Sounds like you really want to be very aware of the impact of the language you use on the hearer, on the parents, and what it communicates with the parents.
Yes.
Is that something
Absolutely.
Okay. So as you're thinking about this conversation, how has it helped you in what ways has this been beneficial for you?
Again, it just helped me to, first of all, continue to put students first, and to think about my place in the school community, and realize that we're not just about teaching and learning, but also about community building, and myself as the leader of this school, I need to be in the forefront of that.
Okay. So to close our conversation, I just want to leave you with a little takeaway. It sounds like you have sort of a brief plan that you can use, monitoring inwardly and then also outwardly with the parents that you're working with. And so what I'd like to invite you to do is think about, as a walkaway, as a takeaway, what might be some ways that you could also communicate to them who you are as a connection to those parents as well. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you notice the driver, intention, actions, and tools used by the coach? What's becoming clearer about the power of coaching?